Hi, in this video, we're going to take a look at how you can utilize the input tool and the select tool and the browse tool. First, let's open a new workflow. Make sure that you have Alteryx Designer open and that you have your folder available that we have provided that contains our data. Now, let's go ahead and drag in our input data. If we want to work with data analytics, we want to always bring in our data to see what we can work with. So once you have brought in your input data tool, we're going to click on the arrow button and locate our file. You should have recent connections. You can also save your connections as favorites, and you can go to files to search for files. I'm going to select file here and locate the data folder that we have provided with this video. Search for Colorado sales data Excel spreadsheet because we will be using this data in this example. Once you have selected it, press open. Now you should see a window with several options. This first option shows you that you can select a sheet. We have two sheets in this Excel file. We're going to press on sheet 1. We don't want to select a range. We want to bring in the whole data. So press OK. Now we have brought our data and we have a preview for the first 100 records in our left corner. There are several options that come along with the Excel spreadsheet. One is the record limit. You can limit your records and rows by simply putting in how many rows you want to see. So let's say you want to work with only the first 25 rows. Press 25, hit refresh. Now you can only find first 25 rows. We don't want to do that. We want to work with the whole data. So go ahead and delete it and hit refresh. The preview only shows the first 100 records. So in order to see all the records, we want to hit run. You can hit run to actually run the tool, or you can do Control R. I'm going to press run. Once you have run the data, you get a message about how fast it ran. Each tool takes about 1 second or less to run. And now we get a more in-depth view with 302 records displayed for this data. Great. We're going to make another input connection, but we're not going to actually drag and drop the input data tool like we did. There are several ways to bring in your data. One way is to actually drag and dropping the input data tool like we just did. The second way we can do bring in our data is to actually locate our file within our windows. And once you have located this Colorado sales data with your folder, you can drag and drop it to the Alteryx canvas. Once you have dragged and dropped it, we get the same option that we had when we located the first time. We're going to select sheet 2 instead of selecting sheet 1. Hit OK. And you can always change the sheet by looking at the table or query option. Once you press on that 3 dots, you can see that you have sheet 1 or sheet 2 to select once again. We're going to keep it at sheet 2. And let's look at the preview. Our preview includes data in our first row. One good thing about Alteryx input data is that you have this option to say, hey, my first row contains data. I want to bring it down so that we only have field headers instead of the data as the field headers. Well, click check mark, refresh, see what happens. Bam, Alteryx brings in the field headers, the default field headers F1 through F4. So go ahead, make sure that you have the option, first row contains data and sheet 2, and run to see our data. All right, now we have the 302 records displayed. So first, we brought in our data by using the input tool by dragging and dropping and clicking on this arrow. The second input tool we brought in by just dragging and dropping this file from our folder. The third way The third way we can use our input data tool is to actually use the input data tool to bring in several Excel spreadsheets. Now, you probably have some financial reports that only differ by the name of the year or by each month. And your fields or your columns are the same, it's just that the data are different. Well, good for you. Input data can bring in all the data sheets with only one input data tool. So let's see how we can do that. First, we bring in our input data tool. Drag and drop it to our canvas. We're going to go through the same step as our first input data tool. Click on the arrow, click on the files, select file. Now locate the folder where you have several of those Excel spreadsheet with only the name only different with north, south, or west. Double click on one of them. Press OK. Now, instead of using several tools to join these similar items together, what we can do is use a wildcard. Wildcard is an asterisk symbol on your keyboard, and that can replace any different word as your name. The only different word in our name is north, south, or west, right? So we can replace north, south, or west with an asterisk. And we can do that in our connect a file or database bar. Locate your north or south or west, depending on which file you selected. Now highlight it. Highlight the word that is different, and make sure you replace it with the asterisk symbol. What Alteryx is going to do is use this wildcard to bring in all the data items that correspond to this pattern. And as you can see, these three files correspond with the location first, and then the name of this file. Once you have done that, we're going to also create an option to output the file name as field. We want to see which data corresponds with which file, and you can choose this option to create another field with the file name attached to each data row. Once you have done that, let's go ahead and run it. Now it has ran, and let's take a look at our data in our results window. We have all the data that is similar, except we have the file name field attached to it, and it shows which file name attaches with which data item. Great. So these are three different ways that we can use input data tool. Very easy to bring in our data, right? Now you can see that we want to change our data. Let's go ahead and look at the second input data tool. Maybe we don't want to F1 to F4 as our header. Sometimes it's really good to have explicit names. And second, we might want to see these as a numeric value. As you saw the difference between the first data sheet and the second data sheet, the second data sheet does not have 1,000 separators. And that is because these are actually string values or text values. We want it to be numbered. We want to total these values. We want to subtotal these values. We want to find the average data values. So in order to convert these data items to numeric values, we use select tool. So in your favorites or preparation tab, go ahead and locate the select tool. Looks like a check mark. Once you're there, bring in and drop it next to the second input tool. Great. Now you should see a connection that has been made. And on the configuration window, you can see that the fields, the type of data, and the size of the data are shown. You can also see a rename column to specify which name you want to rename your field as. Now we want it to be a little bit more explicit. Maybe we want to choose it as data 1, like the first spreadsheet we saw. So go ahead and replace it as data 1, data 2, data 3, and then data 4. Alteryx gives a good job of tracing these changes by highlighting what's been changed, so that when you look at your Alteryx workflow, you can see what select tool change has been made. All right, now we want to also make it into a numeric value. So for the type, you can click on this arrow, down arrow, and we want to use double. Double. So go ahead and change every field as double and rename it to be data number. All right, changing the name was really easy, and also the type was really easy with this select tool. Go ahead and run it, and let's see the changes that has been made. You might wonder where you can see the metadata layer instead of the explicit data values. Well, there's a separate tab here on this results window. And now the metadata has been changed between the output of the select tool and the input of the select tool. Before using the select tool, it was v string and size 255 with the names F1 to F4. But with the output side of the select tool, we see that the name has been changed to data 1 to data 4 and type double, which is the numeric value. Great. We're also going to use the select tool to change on the data on our third input tool. Look at the data. You see that there are red tags and an error message. The value was rounded to 6 decimal places for clarity. Well, with latitude and longitude, we want it to be not rounded because we want it to be as explicit as possible to locate the store. We also want to change the store number value to string. The reason being is we don't add or subtract store numbers, right? So choose the select tool and drag and drop it next to our third input value. Go ahead and change the type of your store number to vstring. You can always change the size of our vstring, but let's leave it as vstring. For the latitude and longitude, however, we're going to change it to vstring and vstring. And we don't want it to be rounded, so let's make sure our size is big enough for each latitude or longitude. So I'm going to make sure that they are 100. In this select tool, we have changed the type from numeric value to a string value, and we have also changed the size of latitude and longitude fields. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at what we have done. Great. Now we see on the output side of the data, we don't have any red flags attached to our values. While as when we see the input side of our data, we see that the red flag still shows. All right. Now we might want to look at our numeric values with some kind of information such as summaries. We want to see the summaries of averages or the maximum value or the minimum value, and you can do that quite easily with the browse tool. So we're going to drag and drop this browse tool right next to our select tool and click run. Now the browse tool shows a little bit more in-depth view of our data. You can look at the first data field by clicking on data 1 field. And it shows you the summary of which values are okay, unique, null, not okay, and empty. So this can be a good way to see how you can cleanse your data. Second, it gives you value statistics. It gives you a frequency chart, a histogram, and also it gives you the average number the median value, the sum of the field. And these might be important for you to make your data analytic decision later on. What if you want to see an in-depth view of your string values? Let's see what Browse tool can do with our string values. Go ahead and drag and drop it right next to our third row of tools. Hit run. Now with our store numbers, we don't want to see a numeric summary. It's useless. But when we look at store number, we can see that all values are unique in this frequent values. And we want to make sure that our store values are unique, because you don't want your store values to be repetitive or not unique, because those are your identifying values. It also gives you length statistics instead of numeric statistics. So first, alphanumeric value, the shortest value, such and such. Values with leading white space and trailing white space. And that will give us a hint on how we can cleanse our data as well. So that is how you use Input Data tool, Select tool, and Browse tool. Thanks for watching.